Good day, everyone. I'm Ron, moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar that is on a guided to provider enrollment and building a successful provider enrollment program. I would like to introduce our presenter for today, that is Cati Harris. Cati Harris, CBCS, is a nationally certified credentialing, billing, and coding specialist with over 20 years of experience in the healthcare industry. Katie is the Director of Provider Credentialing and Contracting with Solor, INC. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Katie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it, and thank you for everyone taking your time out of your day to come and attend the webinar. So let's move on and get started. Building a successful provider credentialing program is critical to the financial health of your provider's business. Today, some of the learning objectives. Well, obviously, welcome. This webinar was developed to provide you with information on building your credentialing program with focus on the preparation, verification, submission, and completion of the provider credentialing process. Some of the objectives are when to start credentialing, the setup and maintenance of NPPES, the INA management system, CAQH, and PECOS, how to review, validate, and track provider documents, how to prepare, review, submit, and track payer applications, items to complete once the provider is credentialed and contracted, the linking of a previously credentialed provider with payers to your tax ID and contracts, and a brief overview of provider revalidations, terminations, and other information. The keys to success in credentialing can be broken down into 4 areas: research, preparation, tracking, and communication. So, where do I start the credentialing process? Research is the key to successful provider credentialing. The research process is divided into 2 parts: provider research and payer research. Provider research. The first part of the process is provider research. One of the most important first steps is a set of vital questions you need to answer. What are those questions? With every provider, regardless if you are doing credentialing within your practice or if you are providing it as a service, you need to provide a provider welcome packet. Continuing on with the welcome package, you should include a provider enrollment information sheet. Continuing on with provider research, you need to obtain provider logins. The following forms are part of the provider enrollment welcome package. So right here is an example of the provider enrollment information form. Just to name a few things, it's got the name, the start date, the provider email address. The other form here is the documents required for credentialing, and as you can see, you can go down these, and I always request these in legible PDF format. The next form is the form for the CV requirements for credentialing. This right here is a sample of description of services. And lastly here is the standard CAQH authorization, attestation, and release. So we've done the provider research. Now we need to move into the payer research. Part of the payer research is the payer application and documentation requirements. What's in the provider welcome package documents? You've got the provider enrollment information document, the provider document checklist, provider CV requirements, the welcome letter, and the description of services. And for the payer documents, you're going to have the payer specific or state application, the payer contact information, and then you're going to have a tracking spreadsheet. This right here is that document I was talking about earlier that had the major payers on it and their preferred methods of submission, contact numbers, so on and so forth. The exception to this is Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, and Medicaid. So now we've done the research, now it's time to do the preparation. After successfully completing the payer and provider research, it's now time to focus on the preparation of the information for submission to payers. Preparation can be organized into 2 sections: provider document preparation and payer document preparation. So with the provider document preparation, first and foremost, and you do not stop, you do not pass go, you always do this first. Review each and every document for accuracy, dates, and infraction. Continuing on with provider documentation preparation, this is the part about reviewing the provider's CV. So moving on to NPPES, CAQH, INA, PECOS. When credentialing a provider, you'll need to access various management systems to ensure the information is accurate, current, and attested. So again, NPPES, NPI registry. So this right here is the direct link to that site. Moving on to the INA system, this is the login for that. CAQH, this is the direct link to CAQH. With PECOS, this is the Medicare credentialing system. The following forms are part of the provider verification process. Again, these are free forms that I'll provide. So this one over here on the left, far left, is the provider verification. This is just a simple form of questions that you need to make sure that you ask. The middle form here is the education verification. So we've done the provider document preparation part. Now we need to move on to the payer documentation preparation. 1, you need to review the payer application requirements. You need to complete the payer application. You need to organize, review the application package with required documents, prep the application package cover letter, check current payer processing times, and then submit the complete application package. So for application preparation, completion of the payer application with current and accurate information is critical to the provider enrollment process. Errors on the application or within the application package can result in holds or rejections. So for payer applications that are submitted via email or fax, these forms are part of the application submission process. So the first one here is the cover letter for the application package for any payer application submitted via a website. So now we're going to move into the linking of a provider or mid-level. If the provider is already credentialed and contracted with a payer as a participating provider, then all you need to do is complete a link to your tax ID and group contract. The following forms again are part of the provider linking process. So right here on the left, you've got the link letter request, and then you also have a fax cover page. So let's talk a little bit about provider revalidations. All payers require re-credentialing revalidation once the provider is credentialed. Unfortunately, occasionally we have provider terminations, whether that is because they're changing to a different work venue or because you terminated them, whatever it might be. There's a couple things that are important for you to remember in provider termination. Number 1, when this takes place, there are steps you need to complete as the group to ensure the provider is no longer linked to your tax ID and group contract with the payer. This part I can't emphasize enough. Provider enrollment tracking is the foremost action to ensure timely, efficient submission and processing of the provider enrollment package. Lack of tracking can lead to payer misplacing the application package, delayed application submissions and processing, missed requests for information, and missing documentation. So tracking is divided into 2 parts. You got document tracking and application tracking. So here are some of your document tracking tools. The provider document checklist that you're going to provide in your welcome package, and then an Excel or Google spreadsheet tracking spreadsheet. This is, there's also the following forms are available to you as well. So for the provider forms, I have a checklist for one for the left side of the folder, which as I stated was the provider side, and one for the right side of the folder, which is the payer side. For application tracking and document tracking, again, the spreadsheet and also a calendar or planner, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So this is an example of a document and payer spreadsheet. The other part of this is communication. Communication can make or break you, whether it be with the providers, the payers, your staff, what have you. Communication is key to the successful and timely processing of your provider's credentialing application. Impact. The whole goal of a successful enrollment program is to minimize the impact. The greatest impact provider credentialing can have on a practice is the financial impact. Some steps you can take to minimize financial impact. So we've got our approval. What's next? First thing, always request a copy of the approval welcome letter from the payer. Request if there is a provider number associated with your provider for that payer. Also inquire when the revalidation date will be due. Always request a copy of the contract and fee schedule. And then create a master information sheet with payer-specific information for that provider. Moving in quickly to information storage. Once you've got the requested payer approval, you'll need to save it in physical and digital copy. And as I stated before, there's been several forms mentioned throughout the presentation. Some of these are some of them. So that finishes it up, and that concludes the presentation. The things that I stress the most with provider enrollment is you have to be organized. You have to pay attention to detail. You have to be able to have your hands in multiple pots at multiple times, because there's always something going on. Communication is the biggest thing, communicating with the payers, asking questions, and keeping your providers informed. So if you follow the things that I've given you and follow the steps, you can create a great, successful program that will yield great results and keep you going into the future. So I appreciate everyone's attention and time and attendance, and I hope that you have a great day and a healthy and safe and happy holidays.
Thank you, Cati. Thank you for this wonderful session.
Thank you.
And participants, that concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cati.